Hi everyone. Today I'm really thrilled to be talking to Dr. Zoe Harcombe. Dr. Zoe is a highly respected international nutrition researcher. She completed her PhD in public health nutrition in 2016, and her thesis examined the evidence that was used to introduce dietary fat guidelines. She continues to make a huge contribution to the nutrition world due to her ability to dissect and understand nutrition research. So Zoe, thanks for coming and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
If you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into nutrition research, that would be great.
Okay, I'll try to give a really speedy history on that one. So, first interest in anything to do with any of this was when my brother was diagnosed as type 1 diabetic when he was 15 and I was 13, and that changed the family diet and the way we thought about food almost overnight. Then went up to Cambridge University and wasn't having a very healthy relationship with food myself at that time, and realized that every single female that I met, female particularly, at Cambridge was in a similar position. And it was the classic, I guess, high achieving, driven, controlling, oriented, dedicated, whatever words you want to ascribe to that population of people. We tended to have a not great relationship with food, and that interested me.
So Zoe, would you like to tell us how you got into nutrition research?
Yeah, I'll give you the potted history as quickly as I can. So aged 13 for me, 15 for my brother. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which had a pretty immediate impact on how the family ate. And it started me thinking about the equal and opposites that were glucose and insulin, because he was using one to counter the other. Wind forward, I ended up going to Cambridge University, didn't have a great relationship with food myself at the time, and realized that a lot of people around me, particularly the females, similarly didn't have a great relationship with food. And whether that was because I was among the typical sort of middle class, high achieving, dedicated, hardworking, whatever, tends to be a bit of a stereotype of those people who gravitate towards not great relationships with food. And I was surrounded by such people. But what also started to fascinate me around that time, around the time I was doing an MA at Cambridge, for example, in the early 90s, was that obesity was starting to take off. And whereas when I was a child, there was one overweight person in the class, we can all remember there was one overweight child in the class. It wasn't the case that a third of the class were overweight or even touching on obesity. And it just didn't make sense, because nobody wants to be overweight. Nobody certainly wants to be obese, because it's quite immobilizing and can be quite painful on things like joints. It's just not something we want to be. And yet 2/3 of the developed world are overweight or obese, and it just didn't make sense. And then you start looking into it and thinking, well, if it is just as simple as eat less and do more, then we would all do it. We want to be slim so badly. If it were as simple as that, we would just do it. And I had a career going on in parallel. So when I left Cambridge, I went into management consultancy. I had the good fortune of being able to work in the US as well as the UK, and then had a career in human resources, which has made me very interested in people and what motivates people and why we do what we do, and emotions and conflicts and very many different things. And that career also enabled me to travel a great deal, Europe, Asia, Americas. About the only place I've not been with business actually is Africa, but then did get to travel in my second career, as I call it. So in 2008, when the financial collapse happened, a lot of senior executives got the opportunity to leave their organizations. There were voluntary redundancy packages all over the place. And I decided I wanted to make my passion my vocation, to see if I could make a living, albeit very, very different to a corporate living, but could I put steak on the table and cat food in the bowl, doing what I love doing. And I'm delighted to say that 12 years on, I'm still able to do that. It's definitely not as lucrative as it is working for big organizations with fancy pensions and fancy bonuses and all the rest of it. But I work with my husband. I love what I do. I've got the freedom to do what I want to do. I am completely independent from any organization. No organization funds me. I won't accept fees at conferences to speak. if I speak somewhere, it's because I believe in what I'm saying, and I believe the organization that I'm speaking for. And that's what I do. And then for the last 10 years, a particular thing that I've become known for, as you very kindly said in your introduction, is dissecting academic papers. So I started 10 years ago, every Monday, taking a topic, usually an academic paper from the week before. So you look through the journal releases and you see that there's the latest epidemiological research from Harvard, or there's been a randomized controlled trial on coconut oil and olive oil and butter. And you go and dissect the paper, and that quite often means dissecting a number of the papers in the references as well, really to get to the bottom of, was it a good piece of research? What did it say? Did what it claimed to say actually, was that accurate? Was it what could be concluded from the research that had been done? And I guess that's that, and speaking at conferences is kind of what I do at the moment.
Well, you certainly make a very significant contribution to the knowledge of all of us, especially for people like me, you know, because what you do really helps me understand the research and many other people like me. So I really thank you for that. Do you want to just mention about your website at the moment? Because people can sign up and get access to this research, can't they? You post every Monday. You post every Monday a study, so it might be a good time to just let people know about that.
Yeah, so my website is zoeharcombe.com, HARCOMBE.com. I do try to put as much as I can on OpenView. I always joke, if I ever win the lottery, then it's all on OpenView straight away, don't worry. But it's our business model, basically. If a few people will pay, I think it's about £1 a week, and if there's a bargain offer, it's not even that, $1 a week or something, to get the sort of 52 articles that I do each year. And it's very kind that you said what you said, because I've had that from a lot of doctors, medical doctors, academic doctors, nutritionists, personal trainers, anyone really interested in nutrition, lay people who are just the people who come along to conferences and are really smart and doing fantastic research and have fixed their own health. Many of the subscribers are those kinds of people who just are completely fascinated in understanding more about health and nutrition. And they say, you've kind of saved me the bother, because something comes out from Harvard and they don't have to go and dissect it and look at the references and see if it's cherry picked or if it really is robust research and if the conclusions were right. They kind of trust me to do it for them. And I really appreciate and I really value that trust, and I really take care with it. So I have to be really aware if I'm going into a study, if I might have any confirmation bias, because I don't want to bring that to the party. And a lot of people say, oh, you low carbers or you keto people or whatever. I'm not keto. I've never been keto. I say of my own eating, I'm low carb relative to government guidelines, because I think government guidelines are catastrophically high carb, but I'm high carb relative to the low carb world. I don't count anything. I just eat real food, and I don't have diabetes and I don't have obesity. I'm not trying to overcome any conditions. So for me, fruit is not a problem. I wouldn't eat 8 apples, which I used to when I was a calorie counter, because I now realize that they're high in sugar and low in nutrition. So I make informed choices. But people will say, oh, you would say that because you're low carb. Some of my books that I've written have actually been quite critical of low carb, because personally, I think it can be quite restrictive and it can be quite difficult for some people to do. I do think that some people need to do it. I think if you've got diabetes type 1 or type 2, you really should be looking to go as low in carbohydrate as you possibly can. But I also accept that some people feel better when they consume some carbohydrates. Some people feel deprived if they don't consume them. For a lot of people, fruit is one of the great joys in life. And the idea that you can't eat fruit seems unnecessary for many people who don't have something like diabetes. So I'm constantly trying to check myself just to make sure I'm not saying that this is okay, because people might think that that's the reference point I come from. And I will find against studies on the low carb side if they've not been done robustly. If it's not good science, it's not good science. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
That's something that I have recognised in your work. I think I remember hearing you talk about Ancel Keys, and you're the first person who's ever kind of stood up for the man, you know, and I think you were really honest and upfront about his work, whereas, you know, he's just demonized by everybody in kind of the low carb keto world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really see that in your work.
Yeah, he
Would
did
you
brilliant work. You can't take away the brilliant work that he did. I mean, the Minnesota starvation experiment, which was published in 1950, the biology of human starvation, that's it's the seminal work on the impact of a calorie deficit diet. Anyone about to start a calorie deficit diet on a Monday morning should read that before they do it, because it is the ultimate what happens if you try to eat less and or do more. And his eat less was just 1,600 calories a day. That is quite generous by some of today's diets, some of those liquid diets that want you down at 400 calories. And he wanted people walking for about 45 minutes a day. That was not a strict regime. And yet he managed to turn sane, intelligent, fit men, it was only 36 men that he studied, into complete and utter physical and emotional wrecks within about 24 weeks. So before you embark on a calorie controlled diet, that's one paper that you really want to read. And it's just not fair to say that overall he was a bad scientist. I think he picked the wrong thing to go after. I think he should have examined carbohydrate and sugar rather than fat, but he didn't. And I don't think we should judge him badly for that pathway when he did some other good work.